Welcome to ISE's Equity Index Weekly Outlook, a weekly outlook on ISE and other industry indexes, hosted by Patrick Ceresna, a derivative market specialist and investment manager with extensive expertise in options and the broader derivative markets. ISE trades options on more than 15 proprietary sector indexes, as well as broad-based indexes and a variety of licensed benchmarks. ISE continually enhances its trading systems and develops new index options products to provide investors with the best marketplace and investment tools to trade smarter.
Hello and welcome to your ISE Equity Index Outlook for July 5th, 2010. This is Patrick Ceresna. As always, we start off with a chart of the S&P 500 using that spider exchange rate fund symbol SPY. We were talking about the upper retracement zone going maybe even as high as the 115 area on the upside. And we were even suggesting that we couldn't rule out the possibility of another retest up into that box zone, but that's where we anticipated all upside attempts for the S&P to be capped and held to. Really, we were talking last week how critical that the little flagging formation was and that support line around the 107 level, suggesting that if the bulls were going to make another attempt higher, it would have to be off of holding support lines at that 107 level. Subsequently, any break of that level would open the window for a move that would actually potentially go as low as the 96 to 100 area on the downside. Last week we had that sustained selling pressure that broke down below that level and now is heading well on its way down to our target zone. At this juncture, as much as it feels like the move is underway and there's a lot of fear at this stage, if you haven't already sold, then much of the immediate downside risk has already been priced in. Obviously, we cannot rule out the possibility of a very short-term dramatic drop that bounces back. But at this stage, we are probably anticipating as little as only 2 to 4 points lower on the downside before some sort of support line holds in and we see some sort of a bounce. So we are looking for a little further weakness, but we are already looking as to where a short-term low can come into that selling. Next here, I want to take a look at the ISE US Regional Banks Index, which is symbol JLO, and more or less we were also looking at that same retracement zones on the upside, thinking that all upside would be more or less contained to this 25-26 area on the upside. We just came in there, tested that, and obviously for the last week or two have completely rolled over. Regional banks are showing a lot of relative weakness at this stage. Very likely here that if the S&P continues to sell down to our targets, that the regional banks should finish testing even another dollar or two lower. We're looking for some initial support lines to come in somewhere around this $22 area on the downside, but overall our bigger picture is still negative, but we are again looking for some sort of short-term bounces to be developing somewhere in this lower range. Next here, I want to take a look at the ISE Index, which is symbol SIN. This is an index of all the casino, tobacco, and distiller companies. Once we hit that overhead resistance at that 113, 115 area, the selling has really come in there, particularly driven by some of the drops in some of the casino names. At this point, we continue to see further weakness coming in here, where our initial downside targets lay in this 94 to 98 area. And from there, we'll be looking for some sort of a short-term counter bounce, but those counter bounces probably will lead to just new shorting opportunities. So we're just initially looking for our profit-taking zones right here, a few dollars lower. Next year, I want to take a look at the ISE Home Builders Index, which is symbol RUF. We broke down below that $8.75 to $9 focal point on the downside, which really has opened the window for further selling. There is a very small support line that finishes a move right down in this $8 area, but subsequently there's very little technical support for that. If the broader markets sell, we could easily still break down below the $8 area. The only legitimate place where there's a bigger picture support line that could kind of give the home builders a break from the selling lies all the way down in the $7 to $7.50 area on the downside, and there we'd be looking for some sort of a legitimate bounce off of the lows that come down over there. There's been a lot of relative weakness in this sector, and we don't see that immediately stopping. Next year, I want to take a look at the ISE Natural Gas Index, which is symbol FUM, and more or less we were actually quite happy a few weeks ago but with the relative strength that we've been seeing in the natural gas sector, but that was completely erased with the last 2 weeks of price action. At this point, we've made it back all the way to the previous lows, and then with the way that the market is structuring here, we could see a legitimate drop down to test as low as the 80-82 area. Our profit-taking zones on any breakdown of this area come in around that 81 to 86 area on the downside. So we'll be watching whether the support line holds as 89.91 should at least on the first couple of go-arounds act as a support, but any break of that area targets that lower zone. Finally, I want to take a look at the ISE Mini FTSE 100 index, which is the symbol UKX, and that London market has been relatively weak versus all the broader markets, and we've already seen the retracement higher that we've been talking about, as well as that same wedge that we talked about with the S&P at this juncture, with that breakdown like last week when we were talking about our downside targets lie all the way in the 440 to 465 area on the downside, so at least another 20 points lower from where we currently are right now. We're looking for that move to fully complete itself on the downside, and then we'll be looking for some sort of a market bounce off of that zone. That was your ISE Equity Index Outlook. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for participating in this week's session. Please join us again next week. For more information about Patrick Ceresna and to sign up for free index options trade alerts, visit www.optionsource.net. To learn more about ISE index options, visit us at www.ise.com/indexoptions.